There we go. And we're back. Hey,
Hey, good morning. Or no, it's good afternoon. You can clearly see I'm still jet lagged. How are you, Richard?
I'm good. How many hours difference was it? Was
It was
it?
a 6 hour difference.
Oh yeah. So that's gonna mess up. That
Yes, it was a crazy week last week. But anyhow, this is reality, right? If you want to travel and have fun, you gotta just worry about that stuff when you get back. So
exactly. Yeah. Enjoy it. Just let the memories kind of take over the lag.
exactly. So I'm super excited because this is an opportunity for me to interview you as you are always giving back to the B2B cohort by making sure everybody's getting their opportunity to talk about themselves and get to know people and sort of find power teams perhaps or potentially good referral partners. So I think it's time for our whole group, and by all means use this anywhere else, to really hear about you and your company. So are you ready?
I am.
Okay. So I'm going to dive into the first question, and if you want to ad lib anything in there, this is your interview, Richard. So just go in there. Okay.
All right. Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay, so my first question was, what inspired you to focus on your consulting work in this digital transformation space, as you call it? And when I say what inspired you, I know that can go so many different ways, but especially because you work with small to medium-sized businesses and not large enterprises, which also need that service. So do you want to answer that if you can?
Yeah. So I've been in tech my entire career. I mean, long story short, I entered it through way back in the early, even the late 90s when the internet was just starting to come on. And for me, at that time, as a young student, just coming out and starting work, it was the one way to get into a field that I thought I could be really strong at. Like what I studied in school was marketing. I did both marketing and tech. But at that time, it was difficult to get into the marketing field, like just the creative agencies. But because the internet was a big thing, you could get in there. And what I discovered is that I ended up liking technology even more than creative. Like I found it more creative actually, because I know I can say this to you because you do creative work. You get a lot of people offering feedback. You have to do a lot of explaining. Whereas when I was doing technology at the time, I was doing programming. I was able to use a lot of creativity to do what I did without having to kind of explain what I was doing. I mean, you're still trying to accomplish business goals, but you're doing it in a real creative way of your own. So why I got into this, I've worked. My dad used to have his own business. Since I was a kid, I ran businesses, so I know what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and I know the challenges that you have. And as we're going up through his business, technology always made a huge leveling in terms of where the company was growing. He had grown to like 50 employees, but we saw the first computers get introduced into the organization, et cetera, right? And I always found that while large companies can throw a lot of staff on things, when you're a smaller company, if you can use technology smartly, you can bring about those same sort of qualities of services with less people. Not that I'm an advocate of reducing staff. It's just like,
Right.
what can we do to support those staffs to make them operate really well? When you're a growing company, when you're less than 10 employees, it's a lot easier to kind of control what that looks like what your offering looks like from in terms of quality, in terms of how you sound and speak, what your brand looks like, how you service customers. But once you get beyond 10 employees, you need to start relying on those people that you hired to activate and act like on your behalf. Like you could keep even running the sales routine, being the main point of contact under 10 employees. But once you get to 10 employees or more, you have to start trusting your other organization without like letting go of the gamut, right? I mean, what I always say, when you're growing and you're growing strong, what you want to do is make sure when you're growing that you don't lose how you got there in the first place. You don't lose that special, like, was it a quality thing that you delivered that was higher quality than anybody else? Was it, this unique customer service offering that you had that nobody else could replicate? You knew everybody's name, you knew like you're just more personable. And as you add more staff, that adds more complexity to deliver that over the staff. And even those staff, you can hire the best staff in round. There's no guarantee that they're always going to stick around. So you need to build
Right.
those processes. You need to kind of duplicate yourself. Like, oh, I wish there was just
Yeah.
more of me to solve those problems. And you need to think more logically too. You still need to manage and run the businesses, but you're moving up to higher levels. So technology helps you be able to do that, and it helps your team too, because they want to deliver really well. They want to deliver high quality as well. So if you've got the right technology to support that team, that gives them a better chance to do what they want to do as well. That's a kind of long-winded answer about it. I hope it got to it.
And you mentioned something that I was going to segue into my next question. So I think it's great because you mentioned very much that your clients often have to be at a certain sort of growth mindset, right? Like, okay, I'm ready to grow. But what do you think is the biggest shift that says to them, okay, I'm going to push the button, right? Now I need to scale. Is it 10 employees? Is it a certain number figure? Or is it something that's gone on mentally that's helped them to see, you know what, my company cannot move forward if I don't digitally transform? I'm not sure if that's the right way to word it, but.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Maybe just a little bit more clarity around growth. I help growing companies, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be growing, right? There's also times we need to do technology rethought, rethink, replatform
Right.
when you're scaling down as well. If you hit like we've gone through a lot of tragedies in terms of like challenges in terms of businesses, the pandemics. You think back the global financial situation. There's times when you're growing up. There's times when you're growing down, and trying to keep that consistency. I can help with that as well. So that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind, and it's really, it's how to keep that. Growth is a trigger point, really, for me, because if you're growing, something's changing. You need to accommodate that change. And why the number of employees kind of matters. It's when you think about communication, right? You used to play this game when you were a kid. If you're just having a one-on-one communication, it's pretty easy. It's pretty simple to follow the conversation along. You add another person, it gets a little bit more complex. You add a fourth person, and then it starts to compound in complexity, and it keeps growing as you add more and more people. So that's why, for me, you can manage most of your business growth on your own under 10 employees, even like spreadsheets, different things. If you're just really good at managing processes, you may not need the additional support of technologies to do that. That's why I always look around once somebody's kind of going past that 10 employee mark, that there's something magical that happens. Like you really got to start, but as an owner, you got to start releasing a little bit to everybody. I mean, you need to do that a little bit for that first employee you hire, but it gets more and more difficult to manage, to control your growth and your environment as you add more people. That's why I say 10 employees is kind of a bit of a trigger point. So I don't know, that answer your question, I guess.
Yes, yeah, it did. It did. Because I said it doesn't have to be a number, but to your point, if this is the magic number, that everything, and it's a good domino effect, then I think, yeah, you answered that perfectly well. I wanted to dive in a little bit because you and I have had the opportunity to work with each other in terms of a value exchange of, what was it like to do a branding exercise with me? And what was it like for me to ask you, hey, Richard, can you help me point with my digital transformation? So we did a little bit of that for each other. So while I was working with you, there were some very key words that kept coming up. And I think it's important that people know this about you. I think this is what's so unique about how you do digital transformation. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is there a specific time in your career that this customer-centric philosophy that you talk about a lot and this collaborative communication, somehow they're all the letter C. I don't know how, but they are. But you talk about these 4 words a lot when you were filling in my branding questionnaire. And I thought they're clearly important to you. They're clearly some of your pillars. But is there a time that, again, in your career, you can say like, you know what, if I didn't have this philosophy, then this person wouldn't have worked with me, or this is what made me stand out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, clients are obviously pretty darn important to an employee. Like I've heard academics talk about, if you get a company down to its ultimate core, really, there's no business if you have no clients, right? Like you can have the ultimate fantasy in terms of what you want to deliver and what type of business you're in, but if you don't have any clients, the clients really, they add reality to a business notion, right? So that's why customer centric is really important. If you're not continuing to grow new clients, keeping those that are around, there's something fundamentally wrong with the business. That's why I always look, okay, let's look at who you're delivering that service to, because when you talk about the type of business, we talk about technology, it's really an investment, right? And just like any kind of investment, you really not need to do a lot of research to understand why you're making that investment and hoping to get a better return for the money you've invested, right?
Right.
So what better place to go to than the client itself to decide, if my ultimate goal is gaining clients and maintaining clients and serving those clients, I need to look back at the customers to say, let them help me be the judge of what I need. If I'm a hugely customer-centric company, if customer service is the thing that differentiates me from everybody else in the world, then I need to really look at all the tools that help me offer really good customer service. So if there's a lot of servicing back and forth where it's a high touch delivery, I might look at it like a customer service software,
Right.
like just to track, am I keeping track with customer inquiries? How fast am I answering those questions? What are the questions coming up? Like, is there something I need to address about my
Great.
product or my service delivery to deal with that, right? If it's not so much high touch, like for example, you think about a Google or an Amazon, you're not really expecting to talk to anybody. Then the service, the delivery of through technology and not necessarily people has to be really sharp to answer all the questions so that you never need to bring a human involved. So like your customer is going to dictate how you invest in technology, like in terms of how you support that customer. What's your positioning?
Mhm.
If you look at two companies that are doing the exact same thing, what's different about you and how you deliver your services versus that other company? And then really look to that to dictate how you invest in that software, where you invest first. Because we always talk about this concept of digital maturity, right? It's this ultimate goal, like it's almost like golf. You're never going to end. Okay, I'm there. I'm a perfect golfer, right? That's a fun thing about golf.
Yeah.
You just keep working at it and keep working to improve all your life, right? So the same thing with this concept of digital maturity. It's like this aspiration of like, I want to get to this level where everything is just working so fantastic, right? That ultimate level, that destination changes as you grow. But that's something you look at in terms of like, what does it mean for me to hit that level of digital maturity? Where should I invest? Because I know it's going to be a continuous thing, right? Do I start with, maybe my first point of, like most customers, my first point of contact with customers digitally might be a website,
Mhm.
right? And then if I don't have a lot of customers like myself, I can rely on a contact management system to support me and my customer relationships. But if you have a lot of customers and those relationships are in depth, and maybe you have a sales team and they come in and out, one salesperson has to cover another, then you're looking at something like a customer relationship management tool to help you, enable like a team delivery of your services, right? And
Right.
then as the entrepreneurs moving up and relying on sales managers and VPs and whatnot, gives them an opportunity to look at from a bird's eye view what's really happening with this
Mhm.
really essential part of my business, right? Like if customers and maintaining customers are really important, I better have a pretty good view on what's going on, even though I'm not in on the day-to-day activities. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I hope it helps people who are watching this understand how listener you are, because you have to listen, put your feet in the shoes of your client, like you kind of just said. I know I'm using my own words here, but got to wear their shoes to know what are their pain points, what's work, go from there and like assess, do we need this tool, that tool, the other tool, or whatnot, right? So I think that's great. I know working with you, I'm not your typical target market, but it was a good experience because of what a good listener you were, and you weren't trying to things back onto me saying, you know what, really, to be fully digital transformed, you should be doing this. You kind of went, you know what, for us in branding, this is what I think is going to work because I already see these tendencies in your business. I see these patterns of software use or whatever it was that you and I had to discuss to be realm of what we're talking about. So I'm going to pose you this question. I don't know how much you're going to like it or not, but I love asking people this question. So if your brand were a person, which you are a person because you're the person behind your brand, and you walked into the room, what would be the first thing they notice about your brand?
Yeah, the listening thing is really important to me, right? I know I don't know if it's when I first approached technology, I'm going to give you a really long-winded answer to get to your question, but I will get to it. When I first looked at technology, it was a bit intimidating. I mean, I think it's got that factor for everybody, right? I want to remove a lot of that with a lot of the decision making. That's why, like when I worked with you, I took a little time to figure out, well, what are you already using and why are you
Mhm.
using that? What's your
Mhm.
comfort level? What's your preference? And we talked about you like Macs versus PC. You use a lot of the technology already in the Mac. So for me, I don't want to fight against the people that are using the technology. The technology should be supporting the people. So it's really important for me to understand how am I going to make them a little bit better? And certainly by throwing a piece of software they don't want to use, that's overcomplicated for them, that's beyond their comfort level, that's not going to help. That's going to send them back 10 steps before they go up three, right? So I haven't really accomplished like this level of improvement. So for me, if you're talking to me in a room and what type of person I am, I want to sit back and listen. I want to get to know you. Like you're going to notice that I ask you a heck of a lot more questions than you ask me, and I'm actually generally curious about people and their businesses. Like I said, I've been around entrepreneurs all my life, and I'm always amazed how they got into the business, how they sustained it, and how they grow. So I ask a lot of questions, and it's really important for me that whatever I touch in terms of this business, I do something to improve it, not set it back, not give
Right.
it any frustrations. So I really look at, where are they now? That's the benchmark of where they want to be. Where does it ultimately makes sense for them to start improving? A good example is like working with nonprofits and social services. Like I remember I did an engagement with this group. All of them are almost the first three words they said out of their mouths were, "I really am intimidated. I'm a pen and paper and pencil type of person. I'm not a technology person. So I don't know how much going to be able to help you." That I really listened to that and embraced that. Told me that, look, technology's got to work with the way I work, right?
Right.
It can't intimidate me, right? So that's really important to me. When you say listening, I'm listening for how can I take what you've already got and comfortably in comfortable change management process, get to that next level without making you feel like you're intimidated or frustrated by that new technology.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And you know what? I think we should talk very briefly before I wrap up with the last question about how, um, maybe not how many industries you work with, because I know many of them, but how do you actually sort of pinpoint, how do they find you? How do you find them? And what do you find like sort of the most exciting industries maybe to work with? Maybe that's the better way to word the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go backwards because I remember the the last thing you said. So I've been involved with business to business network. Like we live in Ontario, it's a huge manufacturing base. There's a lot of manufacturers around. My first stint in the business environment was working for my dad, who had a manufacturing. He was a magazine publisher, but it was for plants, plant engineering and maintenance, Canadian occupational safety. It was all industry related type technology. So I'm really familiar, and I've kind of grown up servicing that business to business environment. So that's one aspect. I love working with businesses. I love helping them support themselves, right? I have a lot more experience working with a business that supports other businesses and understanding that sort of industrial framework. I've also done a lot of work. My wife is in social services. We kind of, we talk about what each other does. And for me, I like supporting businesses that have an ultimate purpose, right? You could
Mhm.
say the same for any business, right? The ultimate
Yes.
purpose, they're supporting a lot of individuals that are working in that organization. They're supporting their customers and whatnot. But there's something about a nonprofit where it gets trickier from a funding perspective, right? Like
Mhm.
they don't talk about revenue, they talk about funding, and they're delivering good services for that funding. So the service aspect of a nonprofit is essential, right? It's got to be done incredibly economically, because when somebody asks where you're investing your funding, they want to know how much is going towards the operational, how much is going to the actual cause that you're doing, right? So
Or, yeah.
the technology that supports a nonprofit has to be super efficient and super well chosen, right? It is just to make sure that they're delivering. Ultimately, everything goes back to the end user, right? And then there's tracking and whatnot involved in that. So I like to work with businesses supporting other businesses. I've worked in that field quite a bit. And I also like to work in the nonprofit. Those are the my two sort of most familiar areas. I've also supported other areas like business to government as well. Like I've done a lot of work in the higher education field, and just working with small governments, municipalities and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense, Richard, because now that I know you a little bit more on a person to person level, and we do tend to attract attract what is in sync with us, right? So I think especially the secondary ladder, like the second bucket of the nonprofits, definitely fits with your brand and how you like to do business. So that's really great. And I think my last question, and then let me know if we've missed anything or anything you'd like to add after this question, is what do you think is the next wave of digital transformation? Like, what's it going to look like for small businesses? I think there might be an element of AI in your question, you know, in your answer, but I didn't really want to just go there, like go right to AI for, you know, because I think everybody just hangs their hat on it. So tell me, what is your perspective on what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it's hard not to talk about. And I'm almost the same way. Like there's so much conversation about AI, I almost want to avoid it. But the reality is it's everywhere. It's
It
a
is.
huge transformation out there. And really to make sure that you benefit from AI, like there you have to have all the underlying systems that are in play, right? You really have to understand how businesses work and how your process, like where your strengths, your processes, where your weaknesses are. And then those processes have to be integrated, right? So
Right.
for AI to really work within your business, you really need to know what areas of your business need that support
Hmm.
initially. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of what I do to assess that, where your weaknesses, where your strengths, where do you need to be better connected with your client? And if AI is going to be the front facing individual for you, like a lot of people using chatbots and
That's
whatnot,
right.
the big question is how fast can you get to a human? Like what can a chatbot do in terms of answering those immediate questions? So I think AI is going to be fundamental in terms of where we're going. I mean, there's so much to uncover with that from like
Yes.
just listening to a podcast today talking about the energy infrastructure and how much that has to change. Like if you're an
Mm,
investor, you might want to look at investing in energy because that needs to support the AI growth. And there's not been as much talk about that as there has been in, getting up and getting a huge data center, right? But I think from a small business perspective and just sticking on AI and technology in general, it's a great element that you're going to start seeing smaller and smaller companies be able to service a lot more people through that technology, right? So I'm hoping, like right now we've got a big growth towards very large companies, very few companies doing all the business. There's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions in that frame. I think what naturally happens in this business world, there's this eruption, constant recreation. You're going to start seeing a lot of smaller businesses be able to deliver more than they previous were. Being able to kind of be on an equal footing of some of these larger organizations, maybe for a smaller market, because of the capabilities of AI and technology that's going to enable that great entrepreneur to be able to focus on what they're really good at and deliver that at scale to their clients. I think that's what I'm most interested in seeing is, people talk about the democratization of this power. I'm looking forward to seeing more individuals deliver more unique talents and skills towards their customers on a larger basis because of technology, not the other way around where we're going to all fold into one organization. That's where I see it going.
yes. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and I totally see what you're saying about how one thing piggybacks on another. Like you just said, maybe you should, if you're interested in investing, go into energy because that's gonna, piggyback onto this. So that's kind of staying ahead of the curve of how do things connect, right? Which is, I think, what you do naturally because you're such a connector to people and on all the businesses. So Richard, is there anything else you'd like to add to this interview that it may be something I've missed completely? So please do.
I'll try to say this. I'd be amiss without talking about our cohort. The
Oh,
reason why I developed this cohort is I work with clients to develop a plan, but somebody ultimately the rubber's got to hit the pavement, right?
mm,
Ultimately, that's got to be executed. And I really saw early on that the more people I know that have the skill sets to support the execution of that work, the better I can deliver on my work. So the B2B cohort is really about us getting to know each other better, like through these conversations, better understanding what you do, Marte, and what I do, so that we could potentially work together. If we discover a client has a challenge, and all of a sudden we have this huge network that we can help that client in a lot of different ways, not necessarily through ourselves. There's
right.
that collaboration aspect, there's the referral aspect. So
Hmm.
I really want to strengthen all of us small business owners that service other businesses by having a group together that we can know each other really well, be really confident in the skills and qualities that we have, and know each other on
Hmm.
an interpersonal level that, when I when a client needs help and I want to hand that off to somebody, I know this person really well. I know they're going to deliver and I feel comfortable about it. And they're going to deliver in a way that keeps me involved in that conversation. So
Right.
the B2B cohort to me is my, where I worked for other organizations and was a consultant, I always had a team behind me. The B2B cohort for me is that team behind me to deliver on whatever plan and however I'm helping that client. So.
Yes, that's so great. And we're so thankful that you started that. So thank you for being at the helm of that. I hope that this gave all the members, and again, if you're going to be posting this on social, posting it wherever you find it appropriate, that it just gives them a little bit more of a window into, what's Richard Clifford Consulting really about. Because like I said, you are such a giver that people don't take the time to then ask you and let you talk about, what you can offer. So I hope so.
Thanks, Marte. I appreciate you doing this. I enjoyed our little swap of service, so we got to know each other a lot better.
Yeah.
And you got to know my company a little bit better, so we could actually have this conversation. So this has been a great fulfillment of that swap of service conversation from the
100%. Thank
Excellent.
you.
All right. Good luck with the kids coming home from school now.
Yeah, I think I have 2 minutes, so we did great.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much again for doing.
Bye,
Yes.
Richard.
Bye, Marta.